Hello everyone, this is Dr. Mercola, and today I'm joined by Charlie Brown, who is the Executive Director for the nonprofit foundation, the Consumers for Dental Choice, and is one of our esteemed Health Liberty Alliance partners. But he also serves as the President of the World Alliance for Mercury-Free Dentistry. So today he's here to give us an update on the process of eliminating mercury amalgam from the world. And he just recently had a press conference with respect to one of the largest manufacturers of amalgam fillings. So can you enlighten us about that press conference?
Be happy to, Dr. Mercola. Dentsply is a major manufacturer, an aggressive marketer of mercury fillings, and regretfully a major polluter. They certainly make good dental equipment. They make all the other dental materials. They don't need to sell amalgam. It's a tiny part of their profits, but they do so anyway. They are ignoring their duty as a good citizen for the environment, and they are one of the world's major polluters because they're a major seller, a major manufacturer and seller of mercury amalgam.
Most of the people watching this already know that mercury is a very potent neurotoxin. But I'm wondering if you could put a perspective on the sources of mercury and the pollution in the environment, and what percent comes from burning coal versus amalgam fillings.
Well, amalgam probably contributes about 10% of mercury to the environment. That number is debatable, but it's a significant source if it's 1/10, even if it's 1/20th. And what we need to realize, I think, is that if mercury is in our mouth, that's a problem, of course. If mercury is no longer in our mouth, we still have a problem. As a farmer said at that news conference in York, Pennsylvania, I'm not giving you mercury for at your table. If you got mercury at your table, that would be a problem. But you are getting mercury at your table because the mercury from the dental offices gets into our sludge and into our vegetables. The mercury from the fillings gets into the air when people are cremated. The mercury gets through numerous pathways, methylates, gets in the fish, and children and adults are eating that fish. So dental mercury, manufactured by Dentsply and other major manufacturers, is in fact polluting and causing direct harm for all of us. So if the amalgam isn't in our bodies anymore, we're still not off the hook, and that's why we're urging everybody to continue to work for mercury-free dentistry.
So we'll have a problem long before we have a solution to stop the put a hole in the dam, so to speak.
Yes,
because it's going to continue for a while. But so the sooner we start this process, the better we're going to be. So what are the customers of Dentsply saying?
Well, a lot of dentists no longer use amalgam. So we are going to their customers, we're going to the public. We have an online petition. We're urging people to go to. Our website is toxicteeth.org. You can go to our Facebook page as well, No More Toxic Teeth Facebook page, and sign on, because we want people to send a message to Dentsply that they make everything else is fine that they make, but they need to stop making amalgam. And that's not just coming from me, that's coming from the people of South Central Pennsylvania, from York and Lancaster and Harrisburg. Many are aghast to learn that one of their major corporate citizens is in fact also a major world polluter, because Dentsply sells this mercury all over the world. In fact, the letter that we sent to Dentsply is endorsed by nonprofit groups, NGOs from all over the world, including from developing countries, who are saying, when you stop selling this in Europe and stop selling it in the United States, don't dump it in our country. We don't want amalgam either.
So in the United States, what's the current stats? We have about 50% of the dentists who have abandoned even using mercury at this point, and what's the rate that we're seeing increased number of dentists who are adopting that philosophy?
Well, many dentists have left amalgam, certainly 40%, and that's right, Dr. Mercola, probably 50% of dentists no longer use amalgam. But amalgam would probably not be used at all were it not protected by the Food and Drug Administration and the interest group the FDA listens to the most, the American Dental Association. We have a terrible revolving door in the way FDA is run. So FDA continues to protect it and won't even stop dentists from marketing amalgam as silver fillings. If we could change one thing, it would be to have the state attorney generals, the FDA, somebody say to the dentist, you cannot say silver fillings. They aren't silver, They're mercury fillings.
And you say that with some degree of authority because you were a former state's attorney from West Virginia.
Yes, I was the Attorney General of West Virginia, right, that's right. And that helped, I guess, get me ready to think about people's issues and going from that very small platform to a national one. And then in the last 3 years, we've had this wonderful opportunity to work on the Mercury Treaty. And that has been agreed to, and we're so excited. We won. Amalgam is, in fact, in this draft Mercury Treaty, and every country who signs this treaty will be required to start phasing down the use of dental amalgam.
Well, congratulations. That was your participation in the World Health Organization. And it took many, many years, 3 years or more,
Yes.
to put that, to corral it all together, and traveling all over the world and eliciting support from all these different countries. And you were successful, and that was included. And what's the timeline for that implementation?
Well, let me say we were successful in part because of you, Dr. Mercola, and your readers, and we want to thank them because many people in the United States, all over the English-speaking world, and in fact with English spoken everywhere in the world, every country in the world, people helped us. People went to their government leaders and said, we ought to put amalgam in this treaty. So by the message you've gotten out and the people watching and listening and acting, writing the letters, sending the emails, helping us with our financial needs has all helped lead us toward getting this treaty, and a treaty that says not only amalgam is there, but there's a roadmap. There's guidelines, there's steps that every country must take written right into the treaty. And it's in the annex. That sounds very legalistic that it's in the annex, but what that means is the treaty can be amended. That language can be amended. We can go from the phase down that every country must start to the phase out that many countries have in fact already begun, because a number of countries are saying it's enough. We're going to put together a plan not just to reduce amalgam use, we're going to get rid of it like Sweden has already done, like Norway has already done, like Denmark is about to do.
So it's great that you essentially got a victory here, but for those not familiar with all the challenges you had, maybe you can just review some of the highlights of the opposition that you faced.
Well, it was. And the World Dental Association, which is kind of like the American Dental Association on steroids, was there at every step asking the delegates to do nothing, to keep amalgam out of the treaty, or if they put it in the treaty, just to talk about prevention, just to talk about everybody should brush their teeth. If the World Dental Association was that concerned about prevention, they wouldn't be taking all this money from the major candy makers. They're not very concerned about, of course. I mean, they like cavities. They make money from cavities. So they were there to lobby, but I think their arrogance hurt them a lot because they've never had a serious opposition. They've never felt that. People have rolled over for them because they say, we're dentists, we know better. Well, they know nothing about the environment, frankly. They know very little and don't want to learn anything more about the terribly destructive damage that the pro-mercury dentists are doing to our environment. And the fact that we are subsidizing them. We are paying their taxpayers, families, dental assistants, are all fishermen, are all paying, funeral directors through crematories are all paying the costs that dentists are invoking on us, the pro-mercury dentists. It's time they stopped using amalgam or they paid for their damage. And since I expect they can't afford to pay for the environmental damage that they cause, I think any responsible dentist today would stop putting amalgam in the teeth, and any responsible corporation would stop making it. And that's why Dent Supply needs to have a phase-out plan, needs to tell the dentists, we're going to stop making amalgam after this date and get out of that business.
And Dent Supply is one of the larger manufacturers?
Yes, they are. They're one of the larger two manufacturers in America, one of the largest in the world, and they do market all over. Interestingly, Dent Supply is already planning its exit from Europe. They are sponsoring a conference in Europe in the summer, which says, how do we transition to mercury-free dentistry? So if the children of Europe are no longer getting mercury in their mouths, my question is, why should the children of North and South America, Africa, or Asia still be getting mercury?
That doesn't make any sense, and I'm glad that the perspective that you took in being successful was this from an environmental perspective. It's because it's a strategy that really wasn't tried too much before, but there's really very little argument against it because it's the logic and the science is so sound.
Well, we were educated. I mean, I had to get this message from the Mercury Policy Project, Michael Bender, who's pushed this issue all along. The treaty was about mercury. Europe is phasing out amalgam for certainly en route very close to that decision solely for environmental reasons. And it's the right reason, Dr. Mercola, because we're all in this together. We can't walk away from the mercury pollution that's being caused by Dentsply, by the other companies that make amalgam, by the companies that sell amalgam like Henry Schein, and by the dentists that put it in people's mouths.
Now, the FDA in the United States is the federal regulatory agency that's responsible for regulating the safety of dental materials, and specifically mercury amalgam. But they have, since its inception, which is well over 100 years now, believed that mercury was safe and sort of authorized its use. So I'm wondering if you could give us an update as to first of all, what the FDA panel in 2010 said about mercury.
For the second time, the FDA scientists said to the Food and Drug Administration bureaucrats, stop protecting amalgam. The first time they voted decisively that amalgam they rejected the idea that amalgam was safe. The second time they said stop putting amalgam in children and pregnant women. And they were clear on that. Nobody disagreed with that. And FDA, and that was in 2010, and in 2011, FDA's director of the Center for Devices, Jeffrey Shuren, promised on videotape that FDA would make its decision in 2011, make an announcement in 2011. We are still waiting in 2013. FDA simply, somewhere along the line, sabotaged its own promises. This is not the first time. This is the third or fourth time that FDA has made specific promises to act on amalgam and then walked away. So there is one interest group the FDA listens to, the American Dental Association, and it's really tragic. FDA will say how bad mercury is and all these other uses, but when it comes to in the teeth, FDA is silent. It's reprehensible that we have a government agency who is so indifferent to the children of America. When Canada has said children shouldn't get amalgam, Great Britain has said pregnant women shouldn't get amalgam, all over the European continent, they are told children shouldn't get amalgam. Australia has said children shouldn't get amalgam, but our Food and Drug Administration, in the fine print, says we don't know if amalgam is safe for children or not. Well, if it doesn't know, the law requires FDA to stop its use, but FDA simply doesn't have the integrity. It doesn't have the wherewithal to stand up and do what its own scientists have asked it to do, what it's required to do under law when it doesn't know if a product is safe. It's simply, the answer FDA gives is delay, delay, delay.
So if you watch the video of Jeffrey Shuren making that statement, which was in response to someone in the audience,
Yes.
it didn't seem like he was without integrity, but it certainly does seem to be the case afterwards. But I'm wondering if another possible explanation would be that he actually is responsible and serves other people. So is it possible that his director or the Department of Health and Human Services may have given him marching orders to actually override what his intention was?
Oh yeah, he could be under orders over his head, but Dr. Shuren's a lawyer, Dr. Shuren's a physician, both. He can make a living. He can resign. If somebody tells him, you break your promise you made to the American people, he has a choice. He can say, okay, I'll stay in the tent and I'll be against the values that I came to serve, or he can walk out. And if he'd walk out publicly and say, they told me I couldn't keep my promise, they told me to keep my mouth shut on amalgam, that would be important. Instead, Dr. Shuren made the promise. He knows he made the promise. It's been hundreds of people have sent him information, probably thousands after they've read your columns, Dr. Mercola. He ignores that. So yes, it could be well up in somewhere in the government. It could be in the commissioner's office. It could be below Dr. Shuren as well. I think we tend to discount the power that the bureaucrats themselves have to create inertia, to do nothing over and over and make sure nothing ever comes out of a government agency.
So the person at HHS, the commissioner of the FDA, is Margaret Hamburg, who also had a former relationship with Henry Schein, who is the largest distributor of mercury amalgams in the United States. So I'm wondering if you can comment, give us your perspective on that relationship.
Yes, relationship understates it. When she left, she was given a couple $1,000,000 by Schein. She sat on their board. She went on the board because this revolving door in Washington, this infamous revolving door that hurts us all so badly, when the Republicans are in power, the Democrats are given these corporate positions, so when they, and vice versa. So when the Democrats returned to power, Hamburg returned to government and got this tremendous appointment. She promised in writing she would sell her Henry Schein stock before she left. She didn't. She held on to her stock options until they gained in value, which of course they did, because she's the commissioner and Henry Schein stock is favored in that situation. She's kept communicating. The counsel of Henry Schein said, after the amalgam ruling, we are indebted to you. Lawyers don't say indebted unless they mean it. Said it to her as commissioner. This was a great day for Margaret Hamburg. Her future is secure. And she said now she's disqualified. We don't know that for sure because she never put it in writing. But she participated in the rule when she needed to, which was to get the rule that she wanted in the summer of '09. The chairman, the president of Henry Schein, thanked her for the insight she had provided to the board members of Henry Schein. This was 6 months after she was commissioner when he thanked her. She never broke her ties with Henry Schein, Inc. Now, the problem for the staff of FDA is to say, well, we know the commissioner has this very tight relationship with Henry Schein, the largest seller of amalgam in the United States. Can we do something that would upset the commissioner, known for this relationship, a relationship whose ties she did not break? She didn't sell her stock when she was supposed to. She didn't stop communicating with them, communicated on her private email, but we got some of those emails through a Freedom of Information Act. So the disconcerting news for the public is this revolving door, which so benefits Margaret Hamburg and her finances, but so hurts public policy making, neutral public policy making. So my concern is that FDA people like Jeff Shuren, knowing of this relationship she has with Henry Schein, may be more risk averse to act in a way that to tell Henry Schein this product shouldn't be sold anymore.
Well, the FDA stalled this year. I'm wondering if you can give us an update as what's happening to children in other countries.
Well, yes, Australia years ago, 10 years ago, said children should not get amalgam. Canada said it in 1996. Britain said it for pregnant women to protect the fetus in 1998. Sweden and Denmark started its phase out by saying no amalgam in the primary teeth, which they call the milk teeth is another term for that. All these countries started with saying we're going to protect the children first. The United States actually recommended that in the treaty. Other parts of the United States government we're very happy with. The United States State Department really did its job at the treaty. They argued for a strong treaty, a robust treaty in their words, and they argued to put amalgam in the treaty. So as a government, we have to learn, is not monolithic. There are many agencies, there are many kinds of good people, not so good people in government, people that were good people and have problems once they face difficulties. But I will say our U.S. State Department stepped up to the plate and did the right thing. And that's why I'm hoping that the rest of the United States government, where once FDA has to answer some questions, may be a force that FDA has to answer. For example, many agencies of government deliver dental care directly. The Department of Defense, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, the Veterans Administration, the Bureau of Prisons. We're going to urge them to start phasing down and phasing out amalgam, direct services. FDA can't stop that. That's a direction the Philippines is going with their concerns, because they had a conference last December and said our intention is to phase out amalgam. So once you work on the services you deliver directly, you set an example everywhere else. And I think that's where the United States could start, with an example, and that is something FDA would have no power to stop.
Now, there's a trade organization, the American Dental Association, that has another variable in this whole process, and I'm wondering if you could expand on the collusion between the ADA and the FDA?
Sure. The iron triangle that keeps amalgam in business is the American Dental Association, whose members make the profits, and the ADA makes its share of it too. The dental licensing boards, who historically enforced the gag rule telling dentists to say nothing about mercury, and the Food and Drug Administration that will not do anything even to stop the deceptive marketing of amalgam as silver fillings. The ADA, even in losing on the treaty, is now saying, gee, this treaty's just about waste and buying separators. They know better. But instead of coming home and saying to their dentist, you know, we should start phasing down amalgam, they're saying don't worry about a thing. It's a risk for the ADA. The risk is that their members will walk away from them, that their members at some point will realize how poorly the ADA has represented their interest and how the ADA is now misrepresenting the very treaty that has been agreed to. So the ADA is starting to get to a situation, because they've always won, they've always gotten everything they've wanted. They've had patents on amalgam, they've just had a free ride, they've controlled the dental boards. But with this treaty, the ADA's credibility is really at stake. So unless they level with their members and tell them it's time to phase down amalgam, if their members learn this from other sources, and they will, the ADA is at real risk of losing massively in membership. And that's going to mean their power will start tumbling.
Now, the patents that the ADA have on amalgam, the patents only last a certain amount of time, or they're still in
They've expired.
They've expired,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it nevertheless is a powerful commentary on the relationship between amalgam and the ADA.
Yeah, it is a commentary. The ADA had patents. The ADA has the seal of acceptance. So the amalgam makers were shoveling money to them so the ADA could say the product is good. The seal of acceptance is not determine them saying, well, gee, we think this product is just the best. The seal of acceptance is basically a pay-to-play system of the ADA that allows them to say, we endorse the product, and the companies over the years are sending money. One of the great business school studies going back to the 1950s was when the ADA, who used to oppose toothpaste entirely, they said people won't go to the dentist if they use toothpaste. The ADA took all this money from Crest toothpaste, endorsed Crest, and Crest just shot past Colgate to be the largest toothpaste seller. It's a business school case study of what an endorsement by a trade group will be. The ADA's certainly has a reputation that will probably catch up with them, but for a long time it was good for product sales.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that, because that's a piece of information most people don't have access to.
Right.
Now, the bulk of the people who view this video are subscribers in the United States, but we have certainly plenty of people in Europe. So I'm wondering if you can update us on what's happening in Europe, and specifically countries like Sweden and Denmark with respect to mercury amalgam.
Sure. Sweden is done with amalgam. Norway's done with amalgam. Finland's almost done. Denmark's almost done. Scandinavia is out of the amalgam business in a real good way. But it's going beyond that now. The European Union is on the threshold of ending amalgam. All the steps have been taken. The consultant to the European Union has recommended amalgam be phased out in 5 years, purely for environmental reasons. At the hearing I was at, it was amusing because the British Dental Association kept saying, but amalgam is safe, to which the consultant was saying, we aren't even talking whether it's safe or unsafe. That's not our decision. Our decision is it's environmentally disastrous. Decision is over. And so the consultant is saying get rid of amalgam. The scientific committees are doing one more evaluation. But the health, as I say, the health issue is no longer on the table as a factor either way. The environmental decision is something that dentists have no expertise over. And the European Council of Dentists, unlike the ADA, really is starting to level with its members and say, really, the time is ending. The time is ending for amalgam. The British Dental Association is saying that to its members. The suppliers are saying that. So the momentum in Europe is, we need to end amalgam, we're going to end amalgam, and that decision will likely be finalized during this year. And that could mean the third largest jurisdiction in the world, the third most populous jurisdiction in the world, the European Union, will be out of having amalgam for all 27 of its countries.
That'll be a happy day when we can
Yes, it
celebrate
will.
that event.
Yes,
that
and the
victory.
effect on the United States will be huge because the Food and Drug Administration always likes to brag, we are the gold standard for health and safety in food. We're the tops in the world. Well, if other countries keep going past FDA, it's no longer the gold standard. So if Europe gets out of the amalgam business, it's time for the Food and Drug Administration. The heat will grow even more on the FDA to quit hiding and to produce.
So that is just great news about Europe. But let's get back to the United States. There's this whole issue of Philadelphia's. So I wonder if you could help us understand what's going on there and what the news is in Philadelphia.
Well, it's disappointing after a run of Philadelphia doing the right thing. They have an outstanding, still have an outstanding councilwoman, Blondell Reynolds Brown. She wrote a law that requires a fact sheet to go to every dental patient, a fact sheet that tells about the risks of amalgam. The Dental Association was furious. They opposed the law. After it was passed, they opposed its implementation. We've got to realize that often after a law is passed, when many of us think, whew, we did it, well, we don't always do it because bureaucrats can sabotage laws. That's what happened in Philadelphia. The fact sheet is supposed to be on the city website, required under law to be on the city website, listed so dentists download it and give it to patients. Patients can just read about it. Interest groups, health groups, environmental groups can read about it.
And the requirement is to give this to every dental patient.
Absolutely. Well, the City of Philadelphia Department of Health took the fact sheet off the website, just took it off. We discovered it. It's hard to discover something that isn't there, but my assistant, Sylvia Dove, did that research, found that out. We brought that to the attention of the city. They said, okay, we'll put it back up. But the damage has been done. And now we don't know if they'll take it off again. The commitment of the City of Philadelphia to enforcing its fact sheet law is highly in doubt. Because if they won't even put the fact sheet on its website, as is legally required, the message to the dentists is, to the Philadelphia County Dental Society is, we're not really enforcing this law. Don't worry about this law. So that's troubling that the City Health Department has had this attitude, which they've had all along. I mean, the commissioner said to the Dental Society, and we have this on tape, well, if you don't like the fact sheet, you can also always write one of your own. That's pretty irresponsible. The people losing on this, and the saddest part of this, and one of the things we learned, is that the dentists that serve the children with disabilities, and children with disabilities in an inner city, those parents probably have trouble finding a dentist, one would think. The dentists who provide that care were telling the parents that they must ignore that fact sheet and must agree to amalgam, or they would not treat them. So we actually had dentists turning away patients when the parents were reading the fact sheet and saying, don't put amalgam in my children with disabilities, who are, of course, the last people who should have mercury that close to their brain. So the Dental Association, the establishment pro-mercury dentists, are just really getting their backs to the wall. That when people learn about the mercury, as they know, they're rejecting it. And so their effort is, we'll try to continue to make sure that people don't even learn about the mercury. So when we pass a fact sheet law, and then it's sabotaged from within a department, and the knowledge is not getting out, even with the law, that's the kind of barriers we must overcome. But with people like you, Dr. Mercola, with people like the people who, your subscribers, your readers, it's great. Because when these things go wrong, we go to the public. We go to the public in Philadelphia. We go to the public in York and Harrisburg, Pennsylvania with Dent Supply, and people respond, people help us, and we break these barriers.
Well, it's kind of curious, with this legislation in Philadelphia, were there not some provisions for failure to enforce the legislation?
Well, when a government doesn't enforce, it's difficult to punish the government officials. That's a problem. For those who don't obey the law, they're at one end, but for those that don't enforce it, it's pretty hard to find penalties. It's troubling.
Interesting perversion of the justice system.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So you've made tremendous progress on this issue, and we're getting really close to having a complete victory, the total elimination of mercury amalgam fillings in the United States and worldwide. So I don't want to give people the false illusion that we have victory now. There's still some steps to take, and I'm wondering if you could give us some recommendations and guidance and maybe a strategy of what the near future looks like.
Well, thank you, Dr. Mercola. I appreciate it. And again, we appreciate the help you've given, your foundation, your readers. We've had lots of help from groups like the Parker Hannafin Foundation in Cleveland who have stood with us, and many dentists, well over 100 dentists in North America, continue to support us every month, every year in keeping our nonprofit group going, as well as the small givers of many kinds and from many countries. Yes, the World Treaty is requiring a phase down. We have to move to a phase down. We have to move from there to a phase out. We need to eliminate amalgam. Native Americans have a saying, what are you doing for the 7th generation? The 7th generation should have no man-made mercury at all. We need to eliminate mercury in all uses on this planet. Amalgam, we have the momentum. We have the United States agreeing to a phase down and recommending an ultimate phase out. We have countries beginning steps toward a phase out, rich countries and poor countries. But we need to provide the momentum. We know there are people inside governments, whether at the FDA, the City of Philadelphia, agencies, health agencies in other countries, who are doing the bidding of the pro-mercury dentists and ignoring even their own duties. So it's going to take a major worldwide campaign. That campaign is in motion, but we can't stop it. I mean, we have to move it forward. Many things have apparent momentum and don't seem to work. Let me give an historical example, would be the civil rights laws. We've had 2 periods of very good civil rights laws. In the 1860s, we had laws that prohibited all kinds of discrimination, capped by a constitutional amendment in 1870 prohibiting the blocking of vote for black people and anybody on the basis of race. Those laws were not enforced. In fact, even the courts refused to enforce them for years. We had to pass a whole nother set of civil rights laws 100 years later in the 1960s to restore the constitutional rights that were created in the 1860s and 1870. So it took that second round of civil rights laws 100 years later. Black people had to wait 100 years for the rights they were given in the 1860s. We don't want to have this 100-year hiatus. We don't want the momentum to be there and then stop. Obviously, the momentum of the 1960s created huge progress. It didn't stop. We have a long way to go, but it was not blocked. And so we are going to make sure that things aren't blocked. We've had blocking in Canada. Canada said no amalgam for children. They've got a dental director up there who encourages amalgam for children. Basically ignoring the guidelines of the country. We have the same problem in Australia. So we don't have kind of this straight line towards success. There never is a straight line towards success, I don't believe. So we do need to keep the momentum going, but we have the momentum. We can win, and I believe we will win.
All right, great. Well, thank you for giving us an update and all the wonderful work you're doing to achieve victory in this really important area, to minimize our exposure to these toxic influences, not only our exposure, but our descendants, as you mentioned, the 7th generation.
Yes, thank you.
So thanks for all you're doing to help us take control of our health.
Thanks for what you do, Dr. Mercola, very much.